Jeffrey,
Yes, hi. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right, thanks.
All right, I've just started the recording now, so we can proceed. So let me formally introduce myself. I'm Rial LaPlane. I'm an author,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I do book reviews for international writers inspiring change. And I think I've read your book actually in the past, The Strickland File.
Right. Mm.
So that's me. And for our viewers, we're speaking to Jeffrey Baer from, are we in Brooklyn or the Bronx?
Brooklyn, Coney Island to be exact. Mm.
Long Island.
Coney Island. Yeah,
Coney Island. Okay, sorry.
it's all
Coney
right.
Island near the Big Apple. Is Coney
Mm-hmm.
Island considered part of the Big Apple or is it?
Yeah, it's part of Brooklyn. You know, it's if you say Coney Island, practically everybody knows what you're talking about. So,
Ah, that's great. That's great. So that's you're 6 hours ahead of us. We're over here in Europe right now. Oh, you're
yeah,
6 hours behind us. Sorry.
you must be
Okay.
sleep deprived, huh?
Sorry?
I heard you're from Sweden. You're calling from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The we operate out of Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
although we service authors from all over the world. So.
Makes sense. I appreciate it though.
No, it's great to talk to you, and we're really honored to talk to you. Like I said, I read your book and the
Hmm.
Strickland File, and you have another book out too. I think it's called A Song Apart, right?
That's correct. Yes. I at some point I wanted to register the book with the website, but I for some reason I just didn't get around to it unless it's actually there already because I don't remember. I just know that I found this site 4 years ago.
Our website, you mean? You're referring to?
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
No, I don't think you're. I don't think A Song Apart is on our website currently, but I can send you the link when we're done here, so you can actually
All right.
send us the
That'd be great.
information.
I thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So this podcast will be about 25 to 30 minutes long.
Hmm.
So we'll just get right into it. Now, tell us a bit about yourself. I mean, I read your bio, but for the viewers' sakes, who is Jeffrey Baer?
That's a good question. Um, I've lived in New York almost all my life. My dad served in Vietnam, and my mom lived in Brooklyn as well. And when he came back from serving our country, we spent about 6 months in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, because that's where he was stationed. I have a few memories of that time. And so the next thing I knew, I was living in a house in Far Rockaway, which is in Queens. And while we were there, my mom gave birth to my two sisters, Alyssa and Carolyn. And eventually we moved to Staten Island. Things weren't holding up particularly well in Far Rockaway. I mean, people were nice and everything, but the neighborhood uh, was falling apart.
Hmm.
So we moved to Staten Island maybe about 13 years after the Verrazano Narrows Bridge was built. And we moved into our new house the day after the blackout in 1977.
Oh, the big blackout. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I lived there for about 16 years before I moved out on my own. Uh, it was a rough childhood because little uh, did anyone know that I was on the autism spectrum.
Hmm.
So when I was a kid, making friends was difficult, and when I was able to finally, make friends with somebody, it was never a question of if they would turn on me, but rather when.
Yeah.
Yeah, my parents were just flummoxed by it. They couldn't figure out what was going on, and they asked other young parents at the time what they could possibly do to get some answers. And they took me to several psychiatrists in Manhattan, none of which, none of whom could explain what was going on. But then, you can't get a diagnosis right off the bat, in just one meeting.
Right.
Anyway, So I lived with my parents for about 16 years, and then I moved into an apartment with a roommate in Forest Hills. The neighborhood was great. The roommate wasn't. We cramped each other's style, basically. That's
Yeah.
usually what they do. And at one point, he broke the lease by moving in his then future wife, who I think had just gotten an apartment on Long Island not too long after, I should say, before she moved in. And now I live here in Coney Island with my girlfriend, Karen. I've been here for about 30 years. I miss Forest Hills, but such is life.
No. Well, Coney Island
Anyway,
is also quite a famous place.
sure. About the only good thing that happens around here is the hot dog eating contest every 4th of July outside of Nathan's. But there's a lot of other stuff.
Nathan's is the premium hot dog place in New York State, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's other stuff happening around here, usually when the warmer weather kicks in. Astroland is gone. It's been replaced by Luna Park, which is also an amusement park.
Mm.
And there's always something happening on the boardwalk at some point. Um, we have karaoke every week, starting on Mother's Day and then on Father's Day. And then uh, it's a regular thing afterwards, like after Memorial Day. Yes, it's mostly on Fridays, and well, I should say 3 times a year they have it on Sundays. And Karen and I go to perform. Uh, I don't know if I'm a legend there, but I am recognized. But the point of it is for everybody to have fun, no matter how they sing, as long as you make an effort.
Yeah. Let's go to your book now. The Strickland File. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the story very much, and I know it's
Thank
based
you.
on actual events that happened to you while you were working at this one particular company. But
Yeah,
where did the name the Strickland File come from?
I was, well, my boss was one of those who just couldn't understand what made me tick from day one. If you're artistic, you tend to have a very difficult time finding and keeping jobs. And I've had maybe 29 jobs since March of 1990, which is when I got what I thought would be my first real job in the work world. That was at a CPA office. They needed somebody to uh, copy tax forms, which I did up until April 15th. And from that point on, they scraped up work for me. And I was out of a job maybe, what, 4 months later.
Hmm.
Uh, I got that job through the Career Services office at Baruch College, where I was studying to become an accountant. They found me that job as well as the one that inspired the Strickland File. And I actually got that job maybe 3 weeks, maybe, or three, I can't remember. But it was pretty quickly after losing the CPA job. And the old saying goes, easy come, easy go.
Right, right.
So,
I mean, the picture you paint of this company and
right.
sort of the work environment, I don't think it doesn't sound particularly unusual for companies
Hmm.
to treat employees that way.
Yeah, and that's something that I wondered about when I started writing it, is if who's going to pick up the book to read it, because it's such a commonplace thing.
Mm.
It's mundane, and some fellow authors said they're not people aren't going to read about something they run into every day, but I went ahead with it anyway.
Yeah, but I think you did the right thing because I think a lot of people can identify with that situation too.
Sure,
So,
absolutely. The teaser copy doesn't suggest that there's anything terribly different about Gary Strickland's experience as opposed to their own.
mm,
But the idea is that, this is a story that the average Joe, I guess, could identify with. I read many bestsellers in the past, and I enjoyed them very much. But I often thought that there should be more material out there for people who, the average commuter around here, on the bus or the subway, something that they can relate to.
Hmm.
But like I said, the office and the work world is so mundane that people might be turned off just reading the teaser copy. But I was willing to take that chance, and I went ahead and wrote it. And the fact of the matter is, this office in the book is based on, like you said, a real place.
Right.
It's to say it's toxic is being generous.
It's a charitable term for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And being, I didn't know I had Asperger's syndrome at the time,
Hmm.
but I was an undergraduate who had just lost his previous job. And apparently, my boss, his name was Alan, got the impression that I would jump at the first job anybody offered me. Big mistake, as it turned out. I mean, it took me about 5 years to get out of that toxic waste dump, but I had to stick around because a bad job is better than none at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The the book, in the end, I don't remember the exact ending on the book. You did get out of the job on the end, right?
Gary does, yes.
Yeah. And
And he
the boss, did he ever stick around or
well, as I was editing this book, I thought it might be a good idea to let people know what happened to the people who treated Gary like a person.
hmm,
And, Alan's out of a job. Adrian, the company president, is out of a job, and it really didn't matter where they wound up because they were so unpleasant to him that, nothing could be, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever happened to them wasn't good enough.
yeah.
If you're talking about karma, basically, even getting a job sweeping the street wouldn't exactly, you know, teach them any lessons or anything. But the point is,
They wouldn't learn any humility from that.
there you go. Exactly.
Yeah. The uh is there a chance for I know you're editing the book now for us. You're going to sort of
Well,
you mentioned,
actually,
I think, in your bio that you were working on an edit of the book.
yeah, and
Does that
that's
mean we can expect a sequel to it?
no, I wouldn't do a sequel to it unless something came up. Um, my idea of a sequel for that takes place 30 years after the job goes belly up, where Gary's daughter Deborah becomes a lawyer, and the first case she takes is whatever Adrian and Alan could bring, to sue him for. But I'm not sure I could find out what that would be, what kind of circumstances would lead to that sort of thing. But I have a title for it. It's called The Strickland Trial.
That's a great title. That's a great title. Now, that would be a very interesting story. I mean, you could string that if
Hmm.
you could get enough information together. That would be just a great follow-up.
Yeah, it certainly would. I wonder if I should let somebody like Scott Turow or John Grisham write it, though. But this is more like social commentary, the Strickland File in itself. And the knock on me at this place was that I didn't have a degree, so I deserved to be treated like a wall-to-wall carpeting there, and
Yeah.
I was still in charge of bringing in the money and managing it, taking it to the bank, making up reports and things like that. And yet Alan was so uh, Alan was more interested in beating the crap out of me no matter how much money came in, whether it was like 5,000 or 50,000 for the day.
Right.
And Adrian was beyond help. You
Hmm.
know, he just didn't care that I had to crunch numbers for him. He'd send me out on ridiculous errands, like buying him a new stick of deodorant or changing light bulbs in the office or whatever. It was abusive. It was
A little bit
abusive, right?
sociopathic behavior, really.
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
you think, just a question, do you think, I mean, it's been a couple decades later now, and with
Hmm.
the whole woke movement and the higher level of awareness on, rights and equality, do you think that you would be treated different or your character would be treated different today?
I doubt it
Hmm.
because there's this disrespect toward people who just got out of college.
Uh,
Gary
they take
has a degree.
advantage of them, right?
Yeah, Gary has a degree. I don't. I didn't have the degree when I was working there. And, Adrian calls him a tadpole at some point.
Hmm.
That's to suggest his lack of experience and know-how or whatever. And I doubt that even in a time like this, when people are starting to become nice to the dismay of those who hate, I doubt that there would be any change in that.
Right, right. Well, okay. I mean, if you do come out with a sequel, throw it our way. We'd love to read it and do a review on the book.
Yeah, that'd be great. Actually, I started writing something else. It's called Desperate People. I don't know if I mentioned it before. And it's meant to be a satire, for lack of a better word, of those sort of larger than life soap opera type novels.
Okay.
Back then, I would go to Barnes and Noble on my lunch break and poke around and seeing, what was on the shelves and seeing all those, you know, soap opera type novels and saying to myself, is this it? Is that all people can read about? I mean, it wasn't, of course. But if you didn't go for the usual stuff like techno thrillers and legal thrillers and things like that, it's almost like that's what's left is
Right.
to read about people who were born in money and roll over it whenever they can. And so, you know, at the time I was saying to myself, this is a genre that desperately needs to be made fun of. And for some reason, I hooked into Sidney Sheldon's novels
Hmm.
because I didn't read very many of them, but I did see them on the shelves, of course, and they all seem to be in the same kind of packaging, you know.
Right.
So I thought to myself, "Ooh, is he going to get it?" But that's not a healthy approach. That by no means is that a healthy approach. And so when I started writing this novel, I just kind of said to myself, do it your way. Don't
Yeah,
try to sound
exactly.
like, yeah, don't try to sound like him because if you write his story in his voice, you committed plagiarism.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Anyway,
in our experience too, in dealing with many authors from around the world and talking to them or through whatever medium, it seems pretty much a principle of authorship that you write what you want to write, what you want to read,
hmm,
and
absolutely.
not just what the readers would like type of approach.
Right.
Because then it gets really authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. And, some people are better at it than others
Hmm.
to begin with.
Yeah. I would
But there
say
would,
that the Strickland File, that's the thing that I remember about it is that I mean it's a slow burn. It's not like a drama thriller, but it's
right.
it's authentic. And that's
Hmm.
what talks to you right from the very beginning. You feel like you're in the workplace experiencing the abuse of
Sure.
your main character. So it's
Hmm.
yeah. On your book,
Well,
just briefly on A Song Apart, just give us an inside glimpse, just a short glimpse of what this story is about, or how actually more about how it was inspired.
Well, it's a coming of age story, and I got the inspiration one day while watching MTV when they still cared about music. They had a brief interview with Chuck D of the rap group Public Enemy, and he was talking about what it's like to meet fans on the street and give them autographs and things like that. And he said for them, For us, it's 30 seconds. For them, it's a lifetime,
Mm.
the impact of meeting these people. And I thought to myself, well, what if it was more than 30 seconds for us? And so I figured that Kevin DeRoe could be a good example of somebody who idolized a female singer, which is sort of a no-no in the society unless she strips while she sings. So basically, the idea was to sort of turn the tables on the usual story of, uh, fan and idol.
Wow.
And it just so happens that one day Kevin well, he doesn't meet her, he encounters Shannon Kistler, who's this young pop star, like 2 years younger than he is. And, he's already in college, and in college, there are certain social standards that you have to live up to,
Mm.
especially where music is concerned. And he didn't necessarily embarrass himself, but he did make his case that he's a big fan of hers. And some of the people that he hangs out with couldn't believe it when they saw him wearing a T-shirt with Shannon's picture on it, which he
Right.
got at a concert. Yeah, so uh, from that point on, it's sort of a struggle, because he's going up against the segment of society that doesn't like the way he thinks for himself. And when the two meet up again and start what seems to be an unlikely relationship, he finds that this same segment doesn't like the decisions she made for herself. She's considered a teeny bopper,
Yeah.
right? Cheap songs about, life and love and all that. And
It's sort of, but it would be correct to say that it addresses a young adult
yeah, I yeah, I
demographic.
tried yeah, I tried pitching it that way, but some agents said you can't set a young adult novel in college because they're not young adults then. They're just
Ah,
sort of like new
that's a point.
adults, as the phrase is now. So,
That's a good point.
mhm.
Well, okay, just a couple more questions for you before we end off. Uh, I hope you don't mind if I ask this question. If it's a problem,
So
let me know. But with the Asperger's syndrome, or is that the correct term for it?
they're not using it as much. They now call it ASD or neurodivergent. And
Okay.
so,
But with that condition, how does that affect your writing? Do you feel that it has a positive spin for you,
yeah,
or
I chose subject matters that normally wouldn't hit the bestseller list, and especially considering that both of these characters are still young. They're pushing their 20s or in
Hmm.
their mid 20s or something,
Hmm.
and maybe older readers can't identify with that sort of thinking anymore. And also using the dreaded first person POV
Yeah,
is easier for me because part of Asperger's syndrome is what's called person-centered dialogue. When I was a kid, I was always starting my sentences with I this and I that, I. Pretty soon those eyes grow big and then hit you over the head.
Hmm.
And a lot of authors say never write a story in first person, which goes against practically half the books you'll find on a bookshelf.
Yeah, it's
Um,
most popularly third person.
yeah, yeah. But it's easier for me for that reason, but nobody's ever going to pick it up from reading the books. And so Desperate People, which is told in third person, is really throwing me for a loop because there's always the matter of head hopping, which my critique group members picked up on.
Hmm.
And, using the first person forces me to be aware of what characters are doing outside the character's, uh, his
Yeah,
vision.
no, I totally
So,
understand that.
so, and
It's
using
also when you write in first person, it's very easy to inject yourself into the story without even realizing it.
yeah, Yeah, but I tried to avoid that by creating scenarios that I haven't experienced. Like for example, in the Strickland File, Gary gets married to his longtime girlfriend Angela.
Hmm.
I'm not married. I hope to be, but I still had to find out about, preparing for a wedding. And also, Angela gets pregnant before they say I do. So I had to do some research there, because that in itself is sort of a no-no in society as well, having kids out of wedlock.
Exactly.
So,
All right. Well, one last question for you before we end off.
sure.
Um, as an author, what advice would you give other authors, particularly other novice authors? Because we have a lot of novice authors that come through our platform. What would
Mhm.
you say to them?
Well, the first thing is to be yourself in your writing. As we talked about before, you got to write what you know, write what you want to write, things
Hmm.
like that. And hopefully you'll have more success, getting past the gatekeepers than I ever did. But that's the only thing you can do is to be yourself no matter what you do. You play sports, you write songs like I do, things like that. You got to be yourself.
Exactly. Good. That's great advice because I mean,
Hmm.
I think that's so true. And we've seen that so many times with authors that we've
Hmm.
talked to. Um, we're going to end off the podcast now. I really want to thank you for being part of this, Jeffrey. I mean, we look forward to your books. I'll send you a link at the end of in a separate email so that
Sure.
we can get your book, A Song Apart, up on our website. And if you've got future stuff coming out, um, we're very happy to review it and do future book reviews on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And I really appreciate you having me here.
No problem. We'll post this podcast video on our podcast page
Right.
along with uh, yeah, so that anybody you can refer to it. You can feel free to pass it around to people. And
Yeah, I'll make sure to put it on the social media, no doubt. So,
great, great. All right. Once again, great talking to you, Jeffrey, and
same here.
good luck with the writing.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir. And
All
get
right.
some sleep.
See you later.
Take care. Bye bye.